Good morning, students. I hope all of you are fine today. So, students, today we will start a new chapter in science, which is transportation in animals and plant students. Okay? So, students, the word transport means we need to send the materials from one place to another. Okay, students? So, in our living body, students, the transport of substance is very essential as because it transports the materials such as food, oxygen, water to different parts of the body as well as the waste materials which are produced after the digestion of the food. They also gets transported from the cells to different organs to the organs specially they are made of for the excretion. So students, the method of transportation of the substances are different in case of plants and animals. So the organs which are responsible or which process the transportation of materials, this system is called as circulatory system, students. So, students, whenever our body produces waste, some kind of chemical reaction do takes place. So, these waste includes the carbon dioxide and urea. Now, students, these chemical waste needs to be removed from our body. Otherwise, it could be very poisonous for us. So, the removal of waste from the body, this is called as excretion, students. Okay. Now the topic is the transportation of materials in animals. Students, as we know, the animals such as unicellular organisms, for example, amoeba, say bacteria, okay, they transports the nutrients in a simple manner so that the nutrients reach every part of the cell by the process of diffusion. Now, what do you mean by diffusion, students? Diffusion means the transportation of materials from a higher or from that position where the nutrients are much more as compared to the nutrients where there is lesser. But students, in case of hydra, the food and oxygen, they are transported by water, okay, which circulates throughout their bodies. So in multicellular organisms, transportation is carried out by the specialized system which are known as circulatory system. So transportation in human means the circulatory system. Now students, as humans have a well developed and efficient circulatory system. That's why this circulatory system can transport the materials such as digested food, oxygen, carbon dioxide, excretory waste and hormones, okay, from one place to another. Now students, you must be wondering that which substance transports the material from one place to another is the blood, as because it flows through all the organs. Okay students, now blood flows all the way through some thin tubes which are called as blood vessels. Now blood vessels are of three types. One is arteries, second one is the veins, and third one is capillary, students. Now in our body, students, the blood is pumped, okay, and it reaches to every part of the body. Now who pumps the blood? Is the organ called heart. So it supplies the blood to the entire body with the help of blood vessels, okay, and it makes a network throughout our body. So that is why each and every organ of our body gets the required blood which they are required for their biological activities. Okay students, so the main components of the circulatory system in our living organisms, especially in our human beings, they are blood, blood vessels and the heart. Now the first component is the blood. So it is a very vital component of our body, okay. It always flows in blood vessels and it circulates through our entire body. Now students, the average blood in our human body is of about 5 to 6 liters. Now it contains a fluid which is called plasma, and it also contains some solid part which is called as blood cells. So there are three types of blood cells. One is the red blood cell, another one is the white blood cells, and third one is the blood platelets. So you can define the blood as it is a red colored fluid, okay, which consists of three types of blood vessels, three kinds of blood cells, that is red blood cells, platelets and white blood cells, which flows throughout our body, and it contains and it transports all the materials from one place to another. Okay, now students, the next part is the plasma. So plasma is a pale yellowish color watery fluid of blood. Okay, it carries water and also the dissolved materials like digested food, waste materials, hormones, carbon dioxide from one part to the another. So plasma contains 55% of our blood. Okay students, now it also contains 90% of water and only 3.5% of common salt. Just remember this. Now the next component is the lymph. So it is another fluid which is also present in blood, and it also helps in the circulation. Now what is the role of the lymph? It protects the body from the germs and infections. Okay, now we will discuss about the three blood cells. First one is the red blood cells. The short form is RBC. You can see the picture students. These blood cells have a shape of disc. Okay, they are bright in color, bright red in color, because of the presence of hemoglobin. Okay students, now this hemoglobin, it contained in the blood, it binds the oxygen, that is it stores the oxygen and it transports from the lungs to the other blood cells. Now hemoglobin also contains carbon dioxide, okay, from the cells. Now how the carbon dioxide is produced? When the food materials gets broken down, okay, and the digestion process started, then carbon dioxide releases. Okay, so it carries the carbon dioxide from the cells to the lungs. Now RBCs also form inside the bone marrow students, okay, which are present in the bones, and the lifespan of these red blood cells is near about 120 days. Okay, now the next blood cell is the white blood cells. It does not have a regular shape. You can see in the picture they are more or less colorless, and they are bigger in size as compared to the red blood cells. Now the functions of the so students, the different types of white blood cells, they perform some different functions. First one is they fight against the harmful diseases. Second one, they attack different kinds of bacteria. And third, they produce some chemicals which are known as antibodies, so that they can fight against infection students. Okay, now how they do that? These white blood cells just gather at the wounded site so that they can eat up the bacteria and the germs which are trying to enter into it. So students, the ratio of the white blood cell to the red blood cell is about 1:500. That means if 500 red blood cells are there, then as compared to red blood cells, there will be only one white blood cells. Okay students, now the next blood cell is the platelets. Okay, it contains tiny fragments of cells. They are colorless and they are round in shape. So the platelet students, they helps the blood to form clots. That means it helps the blood, okay, to stop bleeding at the wounded site, so it could prevent excessive loss of blood at the time of injury students. Okay, now students, we will discuss about the three types of blood vessels. As we have already known that blood flows in a thin tubes like structures, okay, which are called as blood vessels. So the first one is the arteries students. Arteries carries oxygenated blood. That means the blood which flows from the heart to different parts of the body, they flows through the arteries, okay, and they contains oxygen. Now the walls of the artery students, they are thick, they are elastic, and they are made up of muscles. Okay, because when the blood flows, it flows with a jerks and it pauses with high pressure. Okay students, so these artery students, they usually deep seated, and you cannot find, or you cannot locate the arteries easily. Okay, so they do not contain valves students. Valves means a thin like of layer. Okay, so arteries doesn't contain any kind of valves. Now the next blood vessel is the veins. So they carry deoxygenated blood. That means oxygen amount is very less, as because it contains carbon dioxide. Okay, now students, all veins which carries deoxygenated or carbon dioxide rich blood except the pulmonary vein. Okay students, remember this, that pulmonary vein only carries the oxygenated blood, and the pulmonary artery, it contains or it carries the deoxygenated blood. Okay students, so pulmonary vein always carries the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart students. Now how veins looks like? Veins are less muscular, okay? They are less elastic as compared to arteries, and their walls are very thin, as because when the blood flows through the veins, it contains very less pressure and it flows slowly. Okay students, so the network of greenish blue lines which you can see in your hands and legs, they are veins students. Now veins contains some valves which are present at regular intervals, so that it only allows the blood to flow in one direction, that is towards the heart. So the valves prevents the blood from backflow. Okay students, now the next vessel is the capillaries. So students, in the organs and different kinds of tissues, arteries have divided and made some kind of networks of very fine thin tubes. They are known as capillaries. Okay, so capillaries have thin walls and they connect or they form a network from arteries to veins. Okay students, so the food and the oxygen which is present in the blood, it passes to the body cells with the help of capillary students. Similarly, the waste products which are produced like carbon dioxide and the other substance, it also produced in the cells and it directly mixes up into the blood with the help of capillaries. So all kinds of exchange of substances between the blood and the body, it takes place through capillary students. Okay, so students, in page number 151, there's a difference between arteries and veins, so you need to learn it very carefully. Okay, now students, our next portion is heart. So students, heart is an important and very essential organ, as because it pumps blood to different parts of the body. Okay students, how does it looks like? It is a conical in shape, and it is a muscular hollow organ which is situated or which is located in the chest cavity. Okay students, now the size of the heart is more or less of our fist size. Okay, fist. All right, so it is placed centrally, but it is slightly tilted towards the left. So the heart, so our human heart is a four-chambered heart. Okay, that is, it contains right auricle, left auricle, right ventricle, and left ventricle. You can see in the picture students, right? Okay, so students, the top chambers, okay, with thinner walls, that is the walls which are very thin, they are called as auricles, and the two chambers which are located lower, they are made up of thick muscular walls, they are called ventricles. So students, our heart is enclosed or is protected by a double membrane which is called as pericardium. Now, it contains fluid which protects the human heart from any injury or from any shock from outside. Now, what is the function of the heart? It collects blood through the auricles and then it distributes the blood through the ventricles. Okay? So students, remember this, the contraction and the relaxation of auricles and ventricles throughout the process, they this contraction and relaxation carries throughout the whole lifetime. So students, one contraction of heart is called as systole and one relaxation of heart is called as diastole. So systole and diastole, it occurs in a rhythmic fashion. Okay, and the auricles and ventricles, they contract alternatively. Okay students, now students, we will learn about the blood circulation. See the picture. See students, first one is the left auricle first receives the blood which is rich in oxygen from the lungs. Now it receives the oxygenated blood through pulmonary vein, then it contracts, and after that it pumps the blood to the left ventricle. Now next is the left ventricle, then it will contract and it will pumps the oxygenated blood to different parts of the organ, but it will take the help of the main artery, which you can see in the upper part, which is called as aorta. Okay, students. Now, the next is the when all the body organs which have capillaries in them, they are joined to arteries. Now the blood gets deoxygenated, that is, oxygen are distributed to different parts of the body, and the blood will receive the carbon dioxide from it as it gives food and oxygen to the body cells. Okay, so the blood gets the deoxygenated blood, that is the carbon dioxide rich blood, okay, during respiration. Now this deoxygenated blood, which is received from the capillaries, then it enters into the smaller veins and it will ultimately reach to the main vein. Now the main vein carries the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium. After that, it contracts and pumps the blood into the right ventricle. Then ultimately, right ventricle contracts and again it pumps the blood into the lungs through the pulmonary artery, students. So the lungs, deoxygenated blood gives out carbon dioxide. That means the lungs exhales the carbon dioxide and again it absorbs the fresh oxygen from the air, students. Okay, students. All right. Now, students, see our left side of the heart, okay, it has oxygen rich blood, whereas the right side of the heart, it has carbon dioxide rich blood, and it is separated by a partition of wall which is called as septum. Now it is made up of a very thick muscle. All right, so students, each auricle, it communicates with the ventricle. Each auricle, remember this, it communicates with the ventricle by a side pore which is guarded by a very fine separate layer which is called as valves. So the heart has a number of valves, okay, which allows the blood to flow only in one direction only, students. Okay. Now animals such as sponges, hydra, they do not have any specialized circulatory system. So the water in which they live their entire life, it brings the food and oxygen into their bodies, and this water water carries the entire waste materials and ultimately the carbon dioxide moves out throughout their body. Okay. Now the next portion is, students, the heartbeat. So students, one complete rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the heart. Remember, one complete contraction and relaxation of the heart, it is known as heartbeat. So a normal heartbeat, it contains two sounds, okay? And we can only hear those sounds with the help of stethoscope, okay? This instrument is used only for listening the heartbeat. So students, the first sound which you can hear, okay, the sound is like lub, which is made by the valves, okay, and these valves present between the auricles and ventricles. Okay, now how this sound occurs, this sound occurs when the valves snaps shut, then that is, the valves just shut down, then the sound lub occurs. Now the second is a very similar but slightly quieter, okay, which is dub. Now this sound made by the closure of the valves in the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So the first sound which you will listen, it is the sound like lub. It occurs between auricles and ventricles made by the valves, okay, that is the snap shut. Second sound you can hear, which is a dub sound, which occurs when the aorta and pulmonary artery closes down. So this instrument, that is a stethoscope, it just amplifies, that means it makes the sound clear, so that makes the sound edible, makes the sound audible for us to listen it very carefully, so that we can calculate our heartbeat. Okay, so students, at rest position, our normal heart rate, it contains between 50 to 100 beats per minute, but it depends upon the age, it depends upon the person whether it's a female or male, and some other factors. So a normal human heartbeat, it beats around 72 times per minute. Now students, it depends upon the type of work a person is doing, on the basis of which the heart rate might be slowed down or might get faster. But students, if there is a blockage in the blood vessels, if there is a blockage in the blood vessels which supplies the oxygen in the heart, then it will cause a heart attack. Now, what is a pulse rate? It is a throbbing sound of the heart, and it occurs due to the blood which flows in the arteries. So the number of beats per minute you can listen, it is called as pulse rate. So each heartbeat, it generates one pulse rate every minute. Okay, so the rhythmic beating of the heart, it maintains the blood circulation. Now students, the instrument which we have just read about, the stethoscope, we will read about now. So students, stethoscope is used by the doctors so that they can examine the patient's heartbeat. Okay, now the stethoscope amplifies the sound. That means it just makes the sound audible for the doctor so that they can analyze it and they can give the proper diagnosis of the disease the patient is suffering from. Okay, now stethoscope has three parts. First one is it has two earpiece. Second one is it has a chest piece and a tube which joins the parts. So the two earpiece can be fitted in the ear. Now it brings the amplified sound into the ear for the doctor so that it can hear. Now chest piece is a round in shape and it has a flat diaphragm, okay, which is present at its disc. Now diaphragm carries the sound produced by the heart, okay, when the heart just pumps the blood. All right, now it is attached through the rubber tube. You can see a black color rubber tube which is fitted to the earpiece. The doctor listens the heartbeat of the patient and gets a clue of the illness. So the doctor places the chest piece of the stethoscope over the region of the heart and it tries to listen the amplified sound made by the diaphragm of the chest piece. Okay, so with the help of which the doctor can diagnose the patient, students. Okay students, so till here, okay, just read it very carefully and try to read out and try to clear the meaning, okay, from the entire chapter which we have learned till this much, that is the topic till stethoscope. Okay students, so that's all for today. We will continue with the chapter